justice for all. Do a roll call, please. We want to have this town hall so that everybody can voice their opinion over a possible local revenue measure that we are looking to implement to help safeguard essential public safety services. And yeah, the city is facing significant financial challenges. That's why many of you are here. That's why we are here. So on that note, I know many of you are here to see the PowerPoint, so I'll turn it over to Todd.
Yeah, okay, so I've met many of you. I'm Todd Uhas, I'm the city manager. I'm gonna run through this PowerPoint pretty quickly, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Chief Burns, our fire chief, say a few words, and then over to Chief Gibson. So as Mayor Redmond mentioned, we're at a critical juncture, and we're here tonight to lay out where we are and to hear from you, your comments, your concerns. If you don't feel comfortable speaking in public, you can certainly submit your comments to City Hall, and if we need to, we'll have another town hall. Okay. So the city is facing reduced revenue for a couple of reasons, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But to date, we've in a very short period of time, we've drastically made significant cuts down to the bone, and we are working towards that end before we found out about the budget. We've streamlined services, and we've resolved some accounting issues with a new finance director coming on that basically took our old budgets apart and did an audit. Despite all that we've done up to this point, we still have issues. Sales tax revenue, bed tax revenue, all down. You see on the streets this summer a lot of people walking around. What we're finding over the last couple of years is trending either flat or down significantly, and that I'm assuming is a product of high inflation. It's a combination of being in a very uncertain economic environment where people are doing what they can to keep liquid cash on hand, and they're just not spending. One of these issues, I don't know, a lot of you may not know about, is there's 1955 law on the books, Bradley Burns, and it is about who collects sales tax, and there's a phrase that basically hasn't caught up with the internet that large distributors have been exploiting, and the phrase is you can collect sales tax at the point of principal negotiation. And so what's happened is when you order something online here, the Walmarts, the Amazons, the Targets, et cetera, they're arguing that point is their fulfillment center. And so that sales tax revenue stays in the community. They've also, a lot of these cities, in order to attract these big box retailers have cut deals that are not transparent, where those cities are actually giving these companies a cut of their sales tax to get them to locate there. And this is a trend that's continuing. I'm part of a sales tax working group and trying to change this, but we're facing significant lobbying pushback, as you would expect.
Todd, do you mind if I jump in right here?
Yeah, please.
This is a very important issue that I want to make sure that everyone understands. Up until a couple years ago, if any of us were to place an order from Amazon, the city of Mount Shasta would get that sales tax revenue, and that has changed. So the warehouse now that order is fulfilled from, that city is now getting that portion of sales tax. So that's kind of where we're finding ourselves in this situation where our budgeted sales tax is well below what we've been used to getting.
Thank you for simplifying. Okay.
Good job.
So, again, we're back to that structural budget deficit. So what's at stake if additional revenue isn't found? Without new funding, we face potential fire and police layoffs, less frequent equipment upgrades, and potentially other service cuts. So right now, your sales tax, 4% of it or so, oh, thank you for keeping me honest. Okay, goes to the state's general fund. A little over 1%, it goes to a local revenue fund. That allocation is based on population. That goes to public safety, social services, a little bit to transportation, but it doesn't come directly to the city. 0.5% goes to a local public safety fund. Again, that comes into the county, and that's doled out based on population. So it takes a while for you to have enough money to do actually anything worthwhile. Thank you. We have another 0.5% that's donated to or sent to a local revenue fund. That's social services and transportation, a bit of it. And then we have the 1% local jurisdiction tax. That's the actual sales tax when you're paying it in the city that actually comes to the city, and we have a choice of how that's used. And then the local transportation fund is a 0.25%, and the local transportation commission does their best to dole those funds out. But again, based on population, it takes a really long time before we have enough revenue for us to do any significant roadway projects. So, late last year, we had a finance director retire, and 2 adopted budgets ago, the projection was for a 24% reserve. And, we found out on doing an audit that 24% reserve was based on an assumption that we would pass a 1% sales tax for public safety, and it didn't, and you can't budget money that you don't have. There were also, I don't want to get into all the details, but there's some things that were logged as revenue into the city that was logged incorrectly, and it shouldn't have been counted as revenue. So instead of our 24% reserve, we determined that we're actually deficit spending, which caused us to all huddle together, all the department heads, and we made drastic cuts to get us to the point that we're solvent and have a small reserve. It's still not great. We're not where we want to be. Good government accounting practices says that you need to shoot for a minimum of a 20% reserve. So what that's done is it left critical positions vacant. It's, we're down 1 critical firefighter, paid firefighter, and we had 2 vacant positions. It would be great if we could get those 2 back. In the police department, we lost one full-time officer, we lost a part-time officer, and we lost a dispatcher. And that doesn't count all of the equipment and things that we need to operate from day to day. You know, we've got what we need, but there are certain upgrades we need to continue to make to be compliant. Okay, so this is the part that's hard for everybody. We're considering floating a 1.5% sales tax measure on the June 2026 gubernatorial ballot you know, to see what we can do to fill this hole. And if it passed, it would raise $2.6 million a year. Here we've got comparable tax rates around the state. And what I noticed last minute is weed is conspicuously absent on here. They're at 7.5. But that gives you an idea of what other cities are charging for sales tax. So I can read this to you. It may be very boring, but we've worked up a first crack at ballot language early. You know, if we need to make changes, we'll do that. I'm not going to actually read this. If you'd like, I'll take a couple minutes if you want to take a look. So this is a bit redundant, but we figured we'd hammer the point home. It's just our residents, our visitors, they're spending less. We're in an uncertain economic environment. There's an ongoing reduction in sales tax revenue because of the issue with fulfillment centers, and you know, we're continuing to right size our accounting issues. So what's at stake? Without new funding, we face personnel cuts to fire and police departments, potentially more reliance on inexperienced volunteers, and if you've got a night call and you've got one paid firefighter, and bless our volunteers, but if you've got a volunteer that's pretty new, the last thing the paid firefighter wants to be in a position to do is babysit, the volunteer in a dangerous situation. We have the potential that we'll have slower 911 response times. So in what we're proposing, any tax measure that we do pass, we'd have an independent oversight committee. Residents can review our tax measure spending and we'll issue public reports. We'll have annual independent audits that will be open to the public to look at. And unlike much of our sales tax that we collect now, that full 1.5% stays within the community. And that's basically it. But I wanted, before we open it up to public comments, I wanted to give Chief Burns a chance to say a few words, and then, like I mentioned, Chief Gibson.
Good evening. I'm Corey Burns, the Fire Chief from Mount Shasta Fire Department. I'd like to begin with thanking everybody for taking the time to attend the town hall meeting, for showing interest in our community and its future. We are fortunate to live and serve in such a beautiful area, providing services to the residents, many of whom are our own family and friends. We as the fire department are committed to serving you and those who come to visit our hometown. However, we come to a point where that's becoming increasingly difficult. For the last few years, we have been operating understaffed and with an annual call volume that is only increasing. We are becoming overextended. We are understanding wholeheartedly as citizens and taxpayers ourselves that are increasing the tax is not ideal. But unfortunately, it has come to a point where it needs to be adjusted to continue services as we want them to continue. So some bullet points off of that. I mean, right now we are understaffed with personnel, to handle the call volume that we are receiving, as well as having the number of personnel to provide adequate services on certain medical aids. Fires are becoming harder and harder to staff at, the OSHA and NFPA levels, and as well as car accidents and every other incident that we run on a day-to-day basis. So far, we have cut one firefighter position, as well as we have decreased our staffing level by one position over the last few years. So technically, we're down 2. Due to the budget issues and the overtime budget cuts dramatically, we're having, just like anybody else in the city, having a hard time providing that level of staffing, which we're reverting back to our volunteers, which is great to have, and we appreciate them, and they're doing everything they can to right-side us to the best of our abilities. Waiting for one more. And they are committed the best of their abilities and as much time as they can put into the department on their own time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, when they're not at work or doing their own family events or doing whatever comes up in their lives. Our volunteers are young that are committed these days, and we are on a constant training basis with them, but it's, our backs to the wall at times to have experience on some incidents, which can pose safety issues to you as citizens, as well as the city and the department. Back to the response times. Right now we're treading water and we're staying well on our response times, but it could become a problem in the future if we keep going down this rabbit hole. The other thing I just want to point out, and I'm more to talk on the side or whenever, you can come into the station, you can talk to any of my personnel that works, a volunteer, paid, whoever, but the pager keeps going off, and we're still trying to answer those calls as readily and as rapidly and with the most experience that we can. And with your help, hopefully we can retain back to a more level ground and provide that service at the highest level to you. As well as I'd like to point out, we live in a very wildland urban interface area, and, the inspections and the stuff that insurance companies are requiring here and there, it's not going to get any easier, and if we can continue to try to raise the level, it'll help you in the long run. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm Robert Gibson. I'm the Chief of Police for the Mount Shasta Police Department. So along those lines, when we got the notice that there was a severe deficit in the budget, we at the time had a 2-year approved budget. We went back and reworked and where we could find cost savings without the elimination of personnel. So in the first revision of the budget, we were able to properly get grant funds that were not being properly spent or in the right places, move that around on donations and stuff. We were able to eliminate about $194,000 in my budget to bring us closer. We found out that that wasn't enough. So in order to reach the 500,000 plus to get to a balanced budget, it necessitated the loss of one full-time officer position and the loss of the part-time on-call position. Why that's important is you have officers now, you have one less person available to respond, so you may have shifts where you only have one officer on. If one officer is on and there's 2 calls, we have to prioritize the calls. The second thing is now for time off, officers are having less time off. We're looking at more turnout or burnout on the officers, leads to higher turnover, which leads to newer officers all the time, which leads to higher training costs because new officers take a lot of training versus the seasoned officer who's had it. So those are some concerns going into the future. For this year, we have cut, we're current with post requirements for training. Post requires law enforcement officers to have 24 hours annual continuing training education. We've met that for the last training cycle. So it's a 2-year cycle. So for this first year of the cycle, we have halted all training. Even though 95% of that is post reimbursable, which means the state reimburses us for 95% of our travel and training, it's still, we're looking at ways to cut because the last thing we need to do is lose another position. We've stopped all equipment, so we will not be replacing any vehicles except for those vehicles that are grant funded. And I'm going to get into, we got some money coming into the police department. Some of you may be aware, some may not, but we have a $2.9 million grant to the police department, which funds a full-time police officer, a full-time task force officer, which requires that officer to be assigned to a task force in the county, as well as it funds our code enforcement officer. Without that, we wouldn't have a code enforcement officer being paid for in the city. So that grant is paying for all those positions. Another grant that we get is called the COPS funding. It's federal and state funding that funds 100% of the another officer position, as well as it now funds completely the K-9 program. So the K-9s are a little bit different. They require so many hours of training per month per post standard. So they have training that they have to go to. That is now paid through the COPS, and the K-9 Foundation is raising funds. So that is one of the things that we have done to help save approximately $19,000 into our budget. However, we have to continue to cut. That $19,000 is going to have to go towards a salary to an officer with the potential of our K-9 force basically being retired. So essentially, we're now, for the police department, with the cuts and the loss of the positions and stuff, to get our budget down, we cut our budget by nearly $340,000. And there's no, I mean, when we tell you there is no more room, there's no more room. The only way to cut now is personnel. And that's the reality out there. And again, I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Yeah, so we've taken probably too much of your time, but as you feel like it, come on up to the podium, state your name, and we've got a 3-minute timer. We're trying to get everybody in that has comments, and where we can, we'll answer your questions.
Hello. I just have a question for both chiefs. So the positions, you have some positions open? Sorry, you have some positions open? You said you had layoffs.
No, I currently don't have a position. That position was eliminated.
Eliminated. And you, sir?
I have one opening that we are currently filling for another fire captain, but one of my positions is eliminated as well, and we did not augment a previous one from previous years.
Okay. And so for officer safety and firefighter safety, you can't leave a position open. If a firefighter or police officer wants a day off, you have to backfill it with overtime, which is time and a half. So I'm for the 1.5%.
Ken Abbott, 25-year resident. So I just wanted to clarify that 1.5% is going to bring in $2.5 million extra a year. Is that right? Correct. And that's what we need to get solvent, a beginning.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a non-brainer. I'm sorry you're up here pleading with us or asking us. It has to happen. As someone who's now paying for city water, that was free for all those years. Why am I paying for water? Because we needed new pipes, because someone had to pay for the distribution. You know, I'm surprised 1.5% is enough. So I applaud you that you can make it happen, and I don't see how anyone that lives here would not be in complete agreement. I didn't know till 15 minutes ago that it was this bad in here. So thank you for jumping on it, and let's get this thing passed. Thanks.
I'm Nancy Van Susteren. First of all, I'm kind of confused because I thought this was going to be about fire safety, but this is important too. My first question is this a 50+1? Well, good.
Yes.
Because that'll help. All right, I just want to say I support that. 50%
Yes, it's considered a general sales tax increase. So the funds will go to the general fund.
So
50% plus one.
If it's for something specific, it requires a higher threshold on the overall.
So it's similar to what happened in Wairika in November.
So my comment then is your resolution looks like it's for a specific thing. So I would encourage you to start out as saying it's a general sales tax so that you don't run into trouble legally. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Penny Bloodhart. I grew up here. I've lived here for many years. I have a question about sales tax. We just lost our Rite Aid and 2 major restaurants, and I wonder if there's any projection on that. But it is also very hard to people who live here. You cannot buy a book in this town. You cannot buy nail polish in this town. So unless we do something about that to increase the sales tax revenue, I support the proposition and I will support it as I can, but some of these are real hardcore issues that I've seen here in the last few years, so thank you.
If I can speak to that, I totally agree. I think all 5 of us are very pro-business, and we are working on how to make it economically friendly. I know that the city has a history of bad reputation for being bad to work with. I'm certainly trying to change that. I know Todd is working heavily on getting something going with the landing, and there are a lot of prospects that are looking ideal. I don't have an answer for the Rite Aid specifically, but I do see growth coming.
Yeah, it's interesting, and you hear so many people go, well, they opened the Rite Aid because, you know, the city is going to give them too much trouble. So yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Hi, it's Patrick Titus. This is for Chief Burns. Just to clarify for everybody in the room, and correct me if I'm wrong, Corey, if I remember right, that when you have slower response times, lower staffing, that can directly relate to your ISO rating for the department?
That is correct. It was in one of my other notes, but I guess I didn't put it on my other note.
I got your back.
Yeah, so yes, it can affect ratings for the fire department, which also plays a big role on how our insurance companies look and give you your rates. So having the better staffing, faster response times, quicker knockdown times on fires, as well as, just your own health, us being there faster has better outcomes when it comes to major medical emergencies.
That was the point I was trying to make, is that if the ISO rating goes down, then it's highly likely that your insurance costs would go up, and so 1.5 sales tax is a pretty easy win, in my opinion. Thanks, Corey.
Hey, my name's Ted Couch. Thanks for a great presentation and laying out all those details. I think everybody here is in super agreement. We need these services, and we're really happy to live in a city that has these. I think, though, in general, when you start talking about a general tax, for me, the answer is no, unless you get really specific about what you're doing, right? And so here, when we say, what's going to happen if revenue is not secured, everything's very theoretical. Slower response times might happen, personnel cuts might happen, more reliance on volunteers, and so what, right? What are response times now? Are they already slow? Like, how do they rank? Is it a problem now? Would it be a problem if we had a less officer or two? Would we be in a place where we're in line with the rest of the cities in California? And so we need to have those things up front really specific as opposed to just saying we need these because in general we would lose staff. And in theory, I get that that's a problem. You know, I want to see it as staffed as it needs to be. But if we're just going to have a general tax in here, which already, right, I mean, the people who live here, I spend all my money in town in general when it's not online, right? Stuff's already expensive at Ray's. You know, you got to go to Weed to buy groceries and stuff. So more is just going to, it's already going to make me want to shop not in Mount Shasta. And I appreciate putting the other cities up on there about their sales tax revenue. So if we moved up 1.5%, we'd be 9%, which is going to put us around the highest in the North State. And it's important to note, I think there were some cities left off, right? Redding's lower than that, Shasta Lake City, other places, right? So like now we're at a good level. If we go up higher, we'll be at the high range. And so I think people in town here, we can take the good detailed information. Like if you give it to us straight, like we can understand it. So I think we need to get much more specific. And for me too, why 1.5, right? Why is it 2.6? Why not 0.75? And 2, what is the specific amount we're trying to get to because of the specific amount of officers or fire department we need to have the specific response times that we need for these situations. So I hope you'll get there. And for me, these taxes are always a no unless there's those really specific levels. So thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is John Kessler. I am a registered professional forester, and so I've been watching the fires very closely around here. One thing I would like to see the city work on is working more closely with the Forest Service to encourage them to manage their lands close to town and even not so close to town. We got really lucky with the Spring Hill fire. We got really lucky with the lava fire. We got really lucky with the Delta fire a few years ago. We need to do something to treat our forests. I support adding a sales tax to help fund in-town activities. Is this presentation exactly what you want to put on the ballot, or is there going to be some further discussion about what we're going to be voting on in a year and a half, which is a long time away, or I guess just a year. So anyway, that's, you know, I do support what you're doing. As the last gentleman said, some details about what we're looking at would be appropriate, and thank you.
Hello, my name is Stephen Lehman, and I live right next to Spring Hill, actually. So I think the 1.5% sounds like a no-brainer, and I like the fact that it's shared by people who come into the city, and well, I hate to say it, but they kind of have to buy everything here when they're here, so that's good that they share the load, because they do cause a lot of costs on the residents and the city. But I think John was a good segue into what I wanted to have you consider is fines when absentee landowners do not do the fuels reduction on their property. Because I'm surrounded by commercial property, and just to keep my insurance, I have to spend hundreds of dollars every year to do fuels treatment on that property. I think that we can improve our fire safety by getting these vacant land, these absentee ownered lands treated, and maybe we can even create more of a cottage industry, and also there could be fines for non-compliance. The only thing I would have to say is the present situation for filing a complaint doesn't work, because you file a complaint, it gets inspected, they get 3 months to do the treatment. If they don't do it within 3 months, then they get a notice that it's going to be done for them, and by then fire season is over. So maybe we can change up that program also. Thank you very, very much for your time.
And they had the perfect setup for me, so thank you both. I'm Kristen Norman with the Fire Safe Council of Siskiyou County, and I didn't get Corey one of these. We were here a week and a half ago for a Gateway Firewise community kickoff event, and Corey and his predecessor, Jonathan Duncan, they were here for 3 hours with this many people in the room. About 38 people came to our event to start this Firewise community up the Everett Memorial, and these guys were here on their own time for 3 hours talking to our community, and we had run out of this. Yeah, and I brought the next one for you. And I am a 2-time fire survivor, Car Fire and River Complex Hay Press Fire, and I can tell you, you do not want reduced response times, because like the campfire in Paradise, the Car Fire, we did not get notifications. We got knocks on the door with the power out at 5 in the morning. There's many places in this town where campfire can happen all over again, and you might not get a notification. And if we don't have the people out there knocking on doors to wake people up and get them out of their beds, we will have deaths. And so I just want to say, obviously, this tax has to go through. And I'm wondering, how can we think creatively out of the box? I grew up here. I know Corey grew up here. I know Jonathan Duncan grew up here. I have a lot of friends in CHP and all the first responders, and I've seen, as I'm sure a lot of the longtime residents have, seen a total change in our town, for better or for worse, with this spiritual tourism industry. And the second homes and Airbnb, and I know that Airbnb is a whole nother can of worms, but the two things that I see, and I have no idea if this is even remotely possible, but I know people in the spiritual tourism industry, and I know there's people that come from all over the world, all over the country, as these tour guide operators that are making tens of thousands of dollars off of our city and recreation and natural beauty, and they're not putting money into the economy here. They're not. They've got their retreats, and there's not much money out of the tens of thousands that they're making, and then they go back to the East Coast. So I don't know how that could possibly happen, but I see a huge opportunity to bring that money that they're bringing. They're getting paid because of where they're happening. This is happening here. Why is all the money going to them back to wherever they're from? And it's people from all over the world, So I don't know how that would work, but it's just something I see that's like, wow, that's crazy. I'll have all of these at the back. You can Firewise, fire preparedness. I thought it was also going to be more about this, so we'll have all these on the back table if you want to grab them on the way.
Hi, good evening. Johanna L. Torfer. And I also thought it was going to be more about safety. But first of all, thank you, Chief Burns and Chief Gibson, for keeping Mount Shasta safe. I wanted to kind of also approach it from more of a creative ways to get some money and to save money in our budget. And one of them is, I know we've been looking at a new firehouse and things like that, and we have, I believe it's like 50 acres or some government thing, some lease, some long-term lease that we have. And it seems to me that we should be able to negotiate something back from the government, because I think they're not using it as much, or they don't need all the land. And as long as we could separate with a fence their area, we could probably get a very good location for our fire trucks with enough space and at a very good price. I think that would be like a negotiation kind of a thing. The other thing I wanted to ask about, and this has been kind of on my list since back in 2021 when I was talking to Matt Mello about it, and that is to get a siren for our town for emergency situations. And at our last meeting, and I'm still bringing it up because even though it's not about safety, but at our last city council meeting last week, the council talked a lot about grants, and I believe there was 2 different grants that had excess money. One of them had $80,000, 2 fire grants for $80,000 that was not being used they're trying to figure out what to do with that. And then there was a $50,000 grant that could be reallocated to something else. There was talk of $15,000 going for a visitor center roof. So I thought, maybe the other $35,000 from that or from the $80,000 could go towards a siren, because I think sirens are super important. Because it alerts everyone at the same time. It gives them a fair playing field. In Europe, they have different patterns for different types of emergency events like fires, avalanches, etc. So I just wanted to kind of put a plug in for that because I did think this was more about fire safety. I'm glad Todd addressed the Amazon sales tax issue because I think that's huge. And this tourism thing is kind of concerning. Seems like we should be getting something from that. And then as far as fuels reductions, I mentioned, one of the other speakers mentioned that a couple years ago I brought up some ideas for fire safety and beautification where we have a pickup in the spring and a pickup in the fall for homeowners and people to put their yard debris, large yard debris like branches to the street curb. And I understood that happened, although I never got a notice even though I proposed this. But I think that would go a long way because a lot of us don't have a means to get things to the dump. And so we just pay for it. I do it myself, but other people may just not do it. So I think if we make it easy for people to do fuels reduction. Anyway, so I was just trying to think creatively. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Marie Brennan, and I live on the north end of town, so the Spring Hill fire was a little scary, and I thank the firefighters who put that fire out. I also noticed that there was a be on the lookout for an individual the next day, and it sure seems to me that one of our highest risks is just human-caused mayhem. And to that end, I'm not going to say I'd be on the oversight committee, but I'd be sort of interested in continuing to have input that I think we need more policing in this town. Where we live, we get van dwellers every day parking along the city easement, and we try and maintain that as best we can, but that's, going to have dry vegetation, et cetera. Earlier this summer, a person got a camp stove out there and my neighbor business alerted me. I'm like, no, you can't do that. So, I feel like I'm having to police that myself. I don't want to always have to call the police and bug you guys, but I wonder, could we, this would take cash, but could we initiate some kind of program where there's actual parking placards for residents and then we do some ticketing and raise money because honestly, there's a lot of people coming through, living in vans and RVs who are not paying into the city. So, yeah, and I'm going to say I would advocate more on the policing side of things because if we can prevent fires caused by even arson or, just irresponsible behavior, then we don't have to deal with them on this end. So, thank you.
Kathleen Dugan. I actually live up Everett outside of the city limits, and I think what Marie brought up is really good because, so it brings up this question I have about incorporating more neighborhoods into the city. I don't know how that works with property taxes and all of that but it seems like there's an awful lot of people that there's just an option for getting more revenue. And it's and part of that incorporation to me is, we don't have, police won't go up Everett to patrol all the speeders. There's so much speeding in this town, it's absolutely ridiculous. So I'm definitely an advocate for more police presence, but if you're not gonna go past Ski Village Drive, there's so much that goes on up there and the illegal camping and the Forest Service doesn't want to deal with it because they don't have any people. I mean, everyone's suffering from this lack of staff. But anyway, that incorporation issue, I'm sure you guys have talked about it, but that's something that I see. There's so many outlying areas and I've realize the city of Mount Shasta is actually kind of small. You know, when you start incorporating all these other neighborhoods around, could be a huge revenue. But anyway, thank you.
Anybody else?
Aloha. Aloha, thank you. All right, sweet. Clay Neal, Hononui, Hano Afiere Garrigan, live up here by Ken, right by the KOA. You guys know me more for the yes to expedite affordable housing. And so I'm going to say the same thing I said to you guys about a month and a half ago and to the City Planning Commission. Everything that we're talking about tonight, and to staff and to everybody here and everyone there, is cause and effects. All we're talking about is effects. Fire department, police, staffing and vacancies inside the city councils, vacancies in the city planning commissions, retention rates, revenues are down, property taxes has to go up, sales tax has to go up. In short, I'm yes for 1.5% in sales tax. That's a short answer. But that's not the rainbow path that we need to look at 1 decade, 2 decades, 3 decades from now. And so I just want to put that out there. Generationally, the indigenous tribes have ran many acres, 100,000 acres for 100,000 years, based off of 7 generations. That was the paradigm of government. The best thing for 7 generations is what we decide on. That's why it lasted for so long. And so even though tonight we're just saying yes to the sales tax, which I'm beyond super for. And by the way, super thankful for you and the entire staff, because that is next level stewardship over our town. Getting emotional because I am grateful, just so thankful. Coming back to it, in 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I am not an ageist, and I love my elders more than anything, and I am a keeper of one of those flames. And passing to the torch to the next generation is more crucial now than it ever has been before. The problem with us today is that our population is dropping from 3,300 to 3,200 to 3,100 to 3,000. Because of that, mathematically, you cannot maintain a budget of property taxes and sales taxes as a budget, because our population is declining, because our median household is $500,000, and our median price range for an individual in Mount Shasta is $34,000, which means that only someone that can afford $90,000 to $150,000 home is all we can afford in Mount Shasta. We've talked about creative solutions. Here's the biggest point, the cause and effect idea. In the next 10, 20 years, our elders will be making their graduation and ascension, and our population will drop in half to 1,500 in population, and because of that, our kids will leave, our grandkids will leave, our elders will be leaving, and whoever's here left will carry a 300% tax in 10 years from now. So I say we come together and we use THOW and commercial 2s and 3s, 1s and 2s, to get tiny houses on wheels and get our population up. If we can turn the population from 32 to 31 to 32 to 33 and keep going, that'll increase the property taxes, that'll lower the sales tax, that'll get the volunteers and the staffing and all the vacancies to get up, that'll keep our police officers and our fire departments healthy and happy. Insurance is down, and our generations are up.
Thank you. Anybody else? Come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is Captain Dominic Poindexter. I did not plan on speaking tonight, but I will make a couple points. First of all, I am very happy to serve my community, and I've really come up as a fireman here in the city of Mount Shasta, and it has a lot to do with the mentors that I had and the staffing we used to have. We don't have that anymore. Mentors change as times change, but I will say that after 6 p.m. now, you may not have a fire department. So for all of those that live in the community and the surrounding community, you may not get a response from us. period. Having said that, not only does it affect us as a community, it affects our neighboring communities, such as Dunsmuir, McLeod, Hammond Ranch, Weed. We were the gold standard for the fire department in Siskiyou County, and we want to remain that. And currently, we're not meeting those needs. Another thing I'd like to point out is we look to our volunteers very heavily right now, and there's no problem with that, except that they have day jobs. They're not always available. So we need to let off on our volunteers. Another thing is we are not retaining our staffing. I am the last fire captain for the city of Mount Shasta right now. Me and Corey, Chief Burns, are the original 7 that we had a couple years ago. I want that to sink in with you guys. Chief Gibson mentioned something about he's meeting the requirement for his department. We are not currently meeting our requirement. We have 1, maybe 2 people on. We're supposed to have 4 to safely operate. I don't have much else to say other than that. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else wish to speak? Come on up.
So, hello. Oh, gotta bring that down. My name is Katie Haikura. I'm a volunteer with Mount Shasta. I've been a volunteer for about almost a year now. I was formerly a paid staff member. I left my position due to other opportunities in my career. I do wish that I could currently serve in that position, but just due to the way I wanted my career to go, I had to leave it. But I still volunteer because I still love the job and I still love my community. That volunteerism, as Dominic pointed out, we've got quite a few solid volunteers, but unfortunately most of them are inexperienced. I wouldn't use the word babysitting because every moment's a training moment. Every day is a training day. You can always teach someone something new. And the best way to learn is on the job. But the reality is, folks, after 6, due to budget cuts, you might get the new volunteer who's been on for a day. That might be who's showing up due to the budget cuts because we can't afford to pay the overtime. So that's kind of a reality check. And it might just be them. There might be no one else. In the last 6 months, there's been more than a few times where it's just been me and one other guy for CPR, for someone's loved one who's close to death, and we're doing everything we can to bring them back. Someone had mentioned that they're looking for response times, and what Dominic had mentioned is, yes, we do have standard, NFPA 1710. That is the regulation or the guideline that we're supposed to be meeting for structure fires. The regulation states you're supposed to have 4 personnel on the first in engine in 4 minutes from the time of dispatch. If you have a fire at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday, there's a very slim to none chance you're going to have those 4. You might have 2. And it's not going to be in 4 minutes. After hours, it's still not going to be in 4 minutes, but you might have more because volunteers are now off. So no, we're not meeting those requirements, and the NFPA is there to back that up. And that's something that ISO looks at, is our response times. And we are not meeting those because we do not have the staff. Chief Gibson had mentioned all the grants that he has going right now. We have 2 active ourselves right now. One's the Assistant for Firefighters grants, firefighter grant, which is for our turnouts. We're fortunate enough to receive upwards of, what was it?
Over $325,000.
For new turnouts, which was amazing. Turnouts run $5,000 to $10,000, depending on the brand and how much. That's how much it costs to outfit the firefighters. That's how much we were able to save the city. We've also got a fire hazard mitigation grant, which is a fuels reduction grant for us to go out and work. We've got a new piece of equipment that we can go use. Those grants mean nothing if we do not have the boots to fill them. So lack of boots, grants mean nothing. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? Well, for the budget cuts, for budgeting, I believe that's why it's on the June ballot.
Talk about the person that we hired that got the information and.
Yes, as to why 1.5.
So you might want to clarify that a little bit. Let me just say one thing. The special election, the way the county works, you have to file, significantly in advance. And the upcoming November election, you had to have everything in at the very beginning of August, and it felt like, we needed to do the work with the community to build support. We would have rather have gone with the special election. We just didn't feel like we had enough of a runway or the opportunity to talk to the public. So I'm sorry, Tessa, what was your point?
We had a consultant that went out to residents of Mount Shasta. I'm not sure how he negotiated that part. You can fill in my gaps here, but his feedback to us after speaking with the residents was, his recommendation was to go for the 1.5%. So that's where that number came from. And he suggested to wait until the June election.
Yes.
So we're following the direction of the consultant, and which is basically the voice of our constituents.
Thank you. Any more questions or anything? So where do we go from here? Disclosure? I'm sorry. Adjournment?
I can, there was one other comment, sorry, I'm mic hogging now. Sorry, John. About why we aren't designating this for specifically a fire and police election. We tried that last ballot. We had on the ballot a designated sales tax increase that could only go to public safety, and when you designate it, you need a 2/3 vote for it to pass. And we barely, I think we made it over. John and I always argue about it. I thought we made it barely, yeah.
It was slightly under.
It was right around 50%. So our thought going into this, basically we need this in order to function. We need a general sales tax increase. Speaking for myself and the rest of us, hopefully, we are very much concerned with public safety. And we want those positions to be filled. We can't put it on the financials that that money is dedicated to public safety because the voters didn't vote it in that way. But it will be my priority to make sure that the fire department and the police department and public works have their staffing that they need to operate. So I hope that answers some of those questions.
And one other point, with the 2/3 vote to ensure that we're spending the money where we say we're going to spend it, with the idea here with the general tax measure, 50 plus 1, is this time we're going to have a citizens oversight committee that is going to be able to look, at where we are spending the money, and we're spending it where we said we are going to spend it. And we're going to have audits that are made available to that group and to the public. And, you know, the intent is to spend it where we say we're going to spend it.
Well, on that note, thank you everybody for showing up. We're going to adjourn the meeting, and I look forward to talking to everybody about this until June, so we can keep the facts straight and everybody on board. Thank you very much. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Sorry, I was
No, please.
Okay.
I think you spoke for the council.
Okay.
Yeah.